Grawemeyer Award winners and guests, University of Louisville leaders, faculty, staff, students, and alumni, community colleagues, and friends of the university. It is my great honor and privilege to welcome you to the 2025 Grawemeyer Awards celebration. We've had an excellent week celebrating the Grawemeyer Awards and our winners. We're excited and honored to have you celebrate with us this evening. Let me first thank the Grawemeyer family for their continued support of these awards. The family has worked extensively with us in supporting these awards over the years. It is now my honor to introduce Dr. Jerry Bradley, the 20th President of the University of Louisville. Please join me in welcoming President Bradley to the podium.
Thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and members of the University of Louisville community, good evening and welcome to the special celebration of the Grawemeyer Awards, one of the most distinguished honors in academia and beyond. It is a privilege to gather here at the University of Louisville, a place where discovery, innovation, and academic excellence thrive. Tonight we come together to recognize extraordinary individuals whose ideas and contributions have made a profound impact on the world. The Grawemeyer Awards were established by H. Charles Grawemeyer with a visionary goal: to recognize and elevate ideas that have the power to improve the human condition. Presented in music, political science, psychology, education, and religion, these awards honor groundbreaking work that challenges perspectives, advances knowledge, and inspires future generations. As we celebrate the achievements of our distinguished honorees, I encourage each of you to take this opportunity to engage, to reflect, and be inspired by the transformative power of knowledge. On behalf of the University of Louisville, thank you for joining us for this momentous occasion. Now, it is my honor to introduce to you the Reverend Dr. Andrew David Pomerville, President of the Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Bradley, and good evening, folks. This is an extraordinary time for us not just to gather to celebrate the amazing accomplishments of our winners, but truly to pause and to recognize what we are celebrating. We have an opportunity to gather between our two distinguished places of higher education, but also to recognize around the world when scholars get together, when folks are curious, when we wonder together, when we dream together, when we imagine how to improve the human condition, we are doing something that brings all of us further along in our efforts towards creating a better planet, towards being a fuller community, towards promoting peace, diversity, inclusion, and equity, towards being a people that we have been called to be. We come from a variety of faith traditions in this place, just as we do at Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. We pause before meals often to give thanks, and tonight I would invite you to pause then with me as we think of those who made it possible for us to be here, those who trained us, who taught us, who mentored us, and who gave us the chance to gather, to dream, and to continue to teach and learn. Please join me in this moment as we give thanks together and offer gratitude for this day and certainly for these awards. Together we wonder and look towards a future when we believe that the world around us can be improved, not just in ways that are obvious, but in ways we have not yet seen or even imagined. Help us to challenge one another then within community. Let us see strangers who might become friends. Let us imagine places where differences become celebrated so that we see the wholeness of the human creation. Give us a chance over this meal truly to be thankful as we break bread with one another, renew our dedication to our community, and be thankful for the accomplishments of the awardees tonight. We do all these things with gratitude in our hearts and with hope and peace upon our lips. Amen.
Thank you, President Palmerville. Enjoy your dinner. The program will begin soon. Bon appetit. I need to say a couple of words before we see a video. We would like to thank Christina Lee Brown and Owsley Brown III for their generous support of the Grawemeyer Awards, which include the creation of the video you are about to see. We'd also like to thank Stephen Curtis and his team at Curtis Creative for their production efforts in putting this video together.
Why do we need to think big? The world is at an inflection point. Legacy ideas are not the solution we need right now.
The ideas that change the world or have an impact on people are interconnected.
We've got to come together and bring our collective imagination to make this world a better place.
The Grawemeyer Awards, all 5 of them, bring real distinction to the University of Louisville.
Charlie Grawemeyer was an engineer turned investor, and he wanted to give back to the world, and he wanted to give back to U of L, where he'd gone to school. What he did was kind of think outside his sphere. He wanted to recognize ideas that had world-changing potential. That's what he cared about.
Whether we're thinking about education or political science with world order, whether we're thinking about music, I think there's a core around what does it mean to be human, and I think there's a core around what are big ideas that can change the world.
This is an award that highlights ideas that are accessible to everybody.
It's one of the only awards I know in academics that actually has the finalists chosen by the general public.
And so it's this very well-rounded concept where it's backed by the academics or the professionals, I guess, so to speak, and selected by the lay people. The works that are selected kind of appeal to both ends of those spectrums.
The value in having the Grawemeyer Award winners come to campus is we establish connections with faculty, but I think the major benefit is for students because they are being able to have personal contact with people who have done very good work.
My favorite always is to meet with students. There is just incredible trust that gets developed in that short time and really deep exchanges happen. These are the moments of shared humanity.
Universities are the place where a lot of that scholarship is developed. So I see us as connected by sharing a site of idea generation.
It's important to honor new ideas. Ideas have made tremendous impacts on how we have educated our population. Universities are really where the ideas of the Grawemeyer Award are going to flourish.
I feel like we've set a ship afloat here and it's going on its own steam now, and it seems like the community and the university have taken it over, and I'm as interested in watching it sail as I know you are.
Why wouldn't you honor the people who are coming up with some of the most important ideas of our generation or of our time or of this day? They are inspiring us to be our best. These are the people that we should recognize, and that's what Grawemeyer does.
Charles Grawemeyer created the Grawemeyer Awards at the University of Louisville in 1984. As President Bradley noted, the awards recognize important ideas in the fields of music, political science, education, religion, and psychology that can make the world a better place. You will hear from each of the faculty directors and their award winners momentarily. Mr. Grawemeyer believed that for an idea to have broader impact, it should be understandable not just to academics, but to the public as well. As such, the final selection of award winners is made by committees comprised of lay panelists. These individuals are members of the community who are not necessarily professionals in the fields in which the awards are given. However, they do have great appreciation for these subjects and the ideas within them. If you served in the selection of the awards, either as a lay panelist or in another role with the awards, would you please stand? Thank you. And now for our awards presentations, starting with music composition.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Ertz. I am the music librarian and assistant director of the Anderson Memorial Music Library here at the University of Louisville. I also have the honor and privilege of being the faculty director of the Grawemeyer Award for Music Composition. Personally, I'm a strong supporter of Grawemeyer's big idea, that is this inspiring series of awards with a most unique selection process, and it is a real pleasure for me to continue its legacy and make it better than ever. The piece that's been selected this year for music, Invisible Threads, a work composed by Christian Mason for the Wittner-Tage für Neue Kammermusik in 2023, and first performed by the world-class musicians, the Neue Vokalsolisten Stuttgart, clarinetist Gareth Davis, accordionist Krasimir Sterev, and the Arditi String Quartet. It's a work that is rife with networks in nearly every aspect of the work, from its genesis, the composer's past collaboration and works, and most importantly, conceptually. In this collaboration with author Paul Griffiths, who, by the way, has now written the text to 3 Grawemeyer Award-winning works, these two went underground with Invisible Threads and found inspiration in the vast mycelium networks everywhere beneath our feet. This phenomenon is conveyed musically, of course, and quite directly in Griffith's text. But most interestingly, the composer has changed the ritual of performance that we are all too familiar with when we go to the concert hall or to the cinema, etc. By including the audience conceptually in the piece, by inviting them to freely roam the large open performance space, each member experiencing the work in their own way. And rather than being a part of a rigid network, the audience becomes part of the mycelial network along with the performers, the music, the words, moving and changing throughout the work's 70-minute duration. Mason is the 37th recipient of this award and the 5th British composer to receive it. As a performance installation, Invisible Threads is the very first work of its kind to receive this award. On a special note, the Grawemeyer Music Award is celebrating its 40th year this year in 2025. And to illustrate the lasting legacy of this award, Mason, having been born in 1984, entered this world the same year that Mr. Grawemeyer, Professor Nelson Caius, School of Music Dean Jerry Ball, and many others set this ship afloat, as we just saw Grawemeyer so eloquently put it, at the very first Grawemeyer Award banquet. Seeing the excitement on his face and expressing his interest in watching this ship sail, I can't help but think that Charlie may have dreamt of a moment just like this, marveling at just how far his ship has sailed. So with that sentiment, please join me in welcoming the Grawemeyer Awards 2025 recipient for music composition, Christian Mason.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your attention and above all for the warm welcome that we've had in Louisville this week since arriving last Sunday evening. especially I need to thank Matt for his immense hospitality, and I feel like we're visiting family friends, even though it's actually probably the biggest moment of my professional life. So yeah, really, thank you for that. Of course, I prepared some remarks, and I don't know how well I'll stick to them, but I'll see what I can do. I'm going to start with an anecdote, because when I was a child, my musical education, before I started music lessons, I suppose mostly came from listening to my parents' record collection. And my parents weren't professional musicians, but they didn't have a huge record collection, but there was a kind of eclectic mix in there. Some classics like Schubert's Great C Major with Barbara Rowley, or Beethoven's Violin Concerto with Isaac Stern and Leonard Bernstein. But there was also a lot of folk music, Bob Dylan, Pete Seeger, and Peter, Paul, and Mary. And as some of you may know, there's a quite famous folk song called Flora, the Lily of the West. And the opening line of that song is, "When first I came to Louisville, my fortune there to find." And, obviously when I was 6 years old, I didn't think it was going to have such an important meaning in my life. So among my family, that's been quite a source of amusement these last couple of months. Yeah. Well, what was I going to say next? So yeah, I of course wasn't expecting all those years later that in December 2024 I was going to get a phone call, and of course, as a composer, you enter these competitions time to time, and you always keep your fingers crossed. But that process happens months before anything comes to pass, and you forget about it. So one evening when my son Luca was practicing his cello, and then I got this call and it said Louisville, I suddenly got rather distracted, and my wife Audrey said, "Christian, what are you doing? You should be helping." And I said, I think it might be important. So I took the call, and I tried to show her what was going on, and it became clear. So thanks for bringing me here to find my fortune. Anecdotes aside, I'm really so proud to be here celebrating these values of joy and inspiration that are the lifeblood of music, and I think the lifeblood of the Grawemeyer Awards as well. It means so much to find a place in the world celebrating the things that we believe inside but can't always articulate because there's a lot of other stuff going on, right? And this is really my raison d'etre as a composer, and it's the unique ability of music to bring a group of complete strangers into a commonality of spirit, a shared emotional world, through the simple, you could say, primal means of paying focused attention to the invisible vibrations of the air around them. This is what makes music such a profoundly important art form, all the more so in a world of significant, sometimes overwhelming division and conflict. So, yes, I'm really grateful that we are here tonight celebrating community. We're, for however short a time, a community together in this moment. If my piece, Invisible Threads, has a single message to communicate, it's that we are all valuable, indeed essential parts of this shared space that we inhabit, whether in the concert hall, the gallery, or the wider world. Even if connections are not always immediately obvious, it doesn't mean they are not there. I have a fair few thanks, but before I get on to the thanks, one more anecdote. Of course, as is the case with this award, some of the past winners, not just a few, are among my musical heroes. And some of them are also people with whom I've had significant personal and professional contact in my, the course of my life. One I'd like to mention in particular is Harrison Birtwistle, who I worked as his assistant for some years from around 2008 onwards. And I just want to share our first ever meeting, and I was introduced to him, and I gave him a CD of my music, and I said, this piece is better, this one's not so good. I was a bit nervous, of course. And then he just looked at me and said, "Don't worry about a reputation you don't have." And then a few years later, in 2015, I had the fortune to be awarded Ernst von Siemens Music Prize, and this is also a very valued award. And I called Harry up and I said, "Harry, I've just won a big award." And he said, "What is it?" And I told him, and he said, "That's not big." So of course, he's no longer with us, but I hope he's looking down thinking that maybe I've got a slightly bigger award this time. Okay. So I need to thank, of course, the wonderful musicians who Matt already listed, the Arditi Quartet, the Neue Vokalsolist in Stuttgart, Krasimir Sterev, and actually in this case, especially Gareth Davis, the bass clarinet player, because it was him who got in contact with me one day when he heard my previous CD, Zwischen den Sternen, and he said, I like your music, we should do something together. And we had a brainstorm about who were our mutual friends and contacts who we wanted to work with again. And after a little while, it turned out that these were the people we all wanted to work with, and that was really how this project was born. I should also thank Stefan Winter, who was the one who put out that CD, because he was instrumental in the, behind the scenes in connecting lots of people, not least Harry Vogt, the director of Witten Festival, who was the one who had the courage to commission the piece, without really quite knowing exactly how it was going to turn out. Another person I need to thank, of course, is Paul Griffiths. You've already heard that this is his third Grawemeyer, and he's in the musical world. He's something of a legend, having not only written wonderful libretti and novels, but also having written the books about music which teach us what's good. So Paul has become a really valued collaborator over the years, and Invisible Threads was our second collaboration, but I've just finished the third, so that's going to premiere next month in Germany if anyone fancies a trip over the pond. Then, of course, my publisher, Breitkopf and Hartel, always helping me and producing beautiful material and sharing it with the world. I thank them deeply. And Catherine Lebris, my former manager, who was also instrumental in getting this project off the ground and indeed supporting me from the earliest days of my career up until the present time. And my new manager, Isabella Vasilotta, who joined me after this project had happened, but is wonderfully supportive now. Above all, I would like to thank you, the good people of Louisville and the University of Louisville and the Grawemeyer family and everyone here for bestowing upon me the greatest honor of my artistic life. And last but not least, I would like to thank my dear family, Audrey and Luca, who are here with us, and they put up with a composer, which is not the easiest task in life, especially when the deadlines come along, which seems to be increasingly frequent. And even though I've not got the order quite right, because I just said last but not least, it's been a real delight to meet the students of the university and to meet the lay panel and some of the other panelists, and I'm immensely grateful for the attention that you have given to my music, and not just my music, all the other music too. I mean, I know how much work it is to judge a competition. Thank you, and well, congratulations also to the rest of the award winners. I look forward to hearing your speeches. Good night.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Charles Ziegler. I am a professor in the Political Science Department at the University of Louisville. I'm lucky enough to have been associated with the Grawemeyer World Order Award since its inception. We put it together in around 1986, 87, and first awarded it in 1988. And I've seen it through different prisms as a member of the committee in the department, as chair of the department, and for the last 14 years as faculty director. It is really a wonderful award, the most prestigious in the field of political science and international relations. And I'm really thrilled that we have such a fantastic winner this year, Dr. John M. Owen IV, for his book, The Ecology of Nations, American Democracy in a Fragile World Order. I think the commentary on the book is best given by the distinguished international jury that reviewed it. We go through a long review process, peer reviews, departmental committee, the final committee with lay people, but there's a distinguished international jury of the very top people in the field. And here's what they said about Dr. Owen's work. The book is highly distinctive. Owen's focus on the international ecosystem is innovative and an original contribution to the study of liberal democracies. Democratic longevity and democratic crises have generally been analyzed in domestic terms: economic structure, income levels, cultural traits of a society, and so on. But Owen addresses how the international system constrains and influences democracies, focusing in particular on the critical moment of democracy under pressure, the title of the first chapter. The book addresses big, important questions that bear substantially on the award's focus on improving world order. In the words of one juror, the book reminds us of an earlier era of political science, grappling with important intellectual ideas that could have direct impact on the worlds of politics, policy, and government. It is historically rich and sophisticated. It spans various subfields of political science, including international relations, political theory, and comparative politics. It has the potential to be recognized as a major contribution to the literature, comparable to the early works of Samuel Huntington and Stanley Hoffman. The book is easily juxtaposed to the work of the preeminent realist John Mearsheimer. We enthusiastically endorse this book as worthy of the Grawemeyer Award. And I think all of us enthusiastically endorse the award. Dr. John M. Owen.
Well, thank you, Chuck, very much. I want to thank the University of Louisville, the Grawemeyer Awards, John Foray, the committees. I've met some members of various committees here in the last few days. This really is a singular honor. I have just one anecdote, really. I also want to thank, Samuel Huntington was mentioned. He was a mentor of mine. He was a past Grawemeyer winner. He's no longer with us, but thank you, Sam. And Bob Cohan, another Grawemeyer winner, was one of my graduate school advisors. He is with us, not in the room, but I want to thank Bob as well. And I want to thank my dear wife, Trish, who's here. I wrote this book during the pandemic. We were holed up in Vancouver and sometimes under lockdown, and she endured my withdrawal into the study, my long walks, my coming back from the walk saying, "Can't talk now, have to go type." So thank you, Trish. Of course, I knew about the Grawemeyer. I remember, I think it was 22 years ago, I was at a conference, interdisciplinary, had some very distinguished historians, and I was younger. These were very senior historians. One had won a Pulitzer Prize, one had, maybe two, one had won a Bancroft Prize. They're sort of musing about this, and they look at me and say, "So does political science have anything like that?" I said, "Well, there is the Grawemeyer." And I told them about it, including the prize, and one of them said, that's significant enough to make you want to maybe change your research agenda." So I promise I didn't do that. It just dumb luck. But anyway, again, so lovely to be here. I'll say a little bit about the book. It's called The Ecology of Nations. Subtitle is American Democracy in a Fragile World Order. And the bottom line concern of the book really is democracy, liberal democracy, or our constitutional republic, which I don't have to tell you is ailing. Most people who study this look within the country, reasonably enough. What's wrong? What's going on within America? What's gone wrong? I study international relations, and so I tend to look outside in. And so in the book, I build on lots of literature, including some past Grawemeyer winners, to put together a different way of looking at what influences the fortunes of American democracy. And I say countries exist in an environment, and it's a complex environment, but it can be quite powerful and influential. It can, in evolutionary terms, it can select for democracy or not. It can select for authoritarian countries, depending on what's in that environment. We know from history sometimes it's easy to be a democracy. We see democracies multiplying. We see democracies in quite robust shape. The 1990s, not a perfect decade, but that was supposedly the end of history. It was hard not to be a democracy. If you weren't democratic, you had to pretend you were democratic. But compare that to the 1930s, when the opposite was the case. It was hard to remain a democracy. Fascism was multiplying, Stalinist communism. The center, the liberal democratic center, was disappearing and on the back foot. So there's something out there in the world that can make it hard or easy, and that's really where I begin the book. Since the Second World War, this country, the United States, has tried to make the world, in this evolutionary language, select for democracy by setting up multilateral rules and institutions, by things like the Marshall Plan way back in the 1940s, by sometimes promoting democracy, sometimes not very well. To be sure, this country was hypocritical, had a double standard, but in North America, Western Europe, Japan, it basically worked. Nowadays, there are two big problems I identify in the international environment. And one is really a problem of our own making. The kind of liberalism and liberal democracy we've been kind of pumping into the international environment that then feeds back to us hasn't been working very well. It's led to all sorts of social pathologies, polarization, both in an economic sense and a cultural sense. And the second big problem is the rise of authoritarian giants, and the main one is China. China is a single party, what we call a Leninist state. It's semi-capitalist. It's not the China of Chairman Mao, but it's not a multi-party democracy and is determined not to become one. And China is trying to alter some of the rules and institutions and discourse in the international environment to make it select for their kind of country, and that's reasonable enough. I think I would do the same if I ran China. But it's a big problem for democracy around the world. So I linger on these problems, try to look at them from various angles. And then I say, what now? What now? What do we do about this, these big problems? And I'll just say quickly, I think one thing to do within this country, the China problem is very hard, but the liberalism problem, also hard, is something we can do something about. We've rethought liberalism before. The liberalism we have now is not that of 1940, nor that of 1780. We have rethought, and we can do that again. I think we need a more pluralistic liberalism that recognizes that some people really want to commit to community, to the long term, and don't flourish in a world of constant turmoil and frenzy and disruption. But I think we've gotten away from that, and we need to start rethinking that. But the main message really, and I think this is especially pertinent in the year 2025, is we really need to have confidence in the enduring capacity of liberal democracy to self-correct. That's been the magic of this system for centuries. Other systems don't really have that. Ours does. We can, and I'm confident we can get it back if we are smart and do it together. So I'm grateful again to the Grawemeyer Committee for letting me disseminate the ideas even further, and I'm so honored, more than I can say, by this award. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Valentine, and I'm a professor in the College of Education and Human Development here at U of L, and I serve as the director of the Grawemeyer Award in Education. Tonight it's my pleasure and privilege to introduce Dr. Mark Warren, who received the 2025 Grawemeyer Award in Education for his book, Willful Defiance, The Movement to Dismantle the School-to-Prison Pipeline, which was published in 2022 by Oxford University Press. A sociologist by training, Dr. Warren is a professor of public policy and public affairs at the McCormick Graduate School at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. His work concerns itself with the revitalization of American democratic life, a common theme this evening. He has received too many honors and awards for his community-based scholarship to mention them all, but let me just highlight that he earned the prestigious John Simon Guggenheim Fellowship, sorry, Mr. Guggenheim, and was selected as a fellow of the American Educational Research Association. Dr. Warren uses the phrase willful defiance in two distinct ways. One refers to the fact that this term has been used in legislation to mandate and often allow children who are perceived to be troublemakers to be removed from school. Willful defiance is also used to describe the attitudes and actions of families and organizations who are facing up to the disciplinary policies that serve to exclude children from the blessings of education. In part, this book is a reflection of the deep value that education holds for many individuals and families. And given that Dr. Warren is part of the University of Massachusetts system, I thought it appropriate to share the words of our second president, John Adams, who once wrote that education is so valuable that it is perhaps the one thing that you cannot overpay for. And as principal author of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, he listed several civic virtues, including humanity and benevolence, public and private charity, industry and frugality. He was a Puritan after all, or Puritan forebears. Honesty, sincerity, good humor, and generous sentiments. He listed these civic virtues in the Constitution because he believed that the preservation of rights and liberties depends on knowledge and virtue. And he believed that knowledge and virtue depend on education. And it was this set of beliefs that led him to write in the Constitution, "It shall be the duty of legislatures and magistrates to cherish the interests of literature and the sciences." So the word cherish means to love, protect, and hold dear, right? So education needs to be loved, protected, and held dear. The changes that Dr. Warren describes in his book would have been impossible if the families affected by exclusionary disciplinary practices did not share with Mr. Adams a love of and respect for education. Like many great works, Willful Defiance can be read on multiple levels. It's a book about community organization. It's an applied lesson in organizational change that could be studied in any Masters of Business Administration program in the country. It's about how schools are often organized to push some children out. But it's also a book of hope that when people come together and work toward a noble end, good things can happen even when they're impossible, when they seem to be impossible. So Dr. Warren's joined tonight this evening by his wife and his eldest daughter, so I hope that you'll please welcome them and join me in welcoming and congratulating them to Louisville.
Well, I didn't know I was getting a medal, and it's actually kind of heavy, but it's, you know, it's very nice. It's very nice. First of all, I just want to thank Jeff Valentine and, you know, the Dean of the College of Education, Tabitha, and all the folks who, you know, on the award committee, who gave me this award and welcomed me, and also now my family over the last couple of days. and took me all over the place, including a community meeting to talk about the work that I'm doing. So it was it's been great to be here. I really valued getting to know people, and both at the academy and in the community as well. So when Jeff called me to tell me that I won the award, of course I was thrilled. It was fabulous. But I had a little tension because my name is on the book. I wrote the book. I did a lot of work for the book. But I'm a community engaged scholar, and I do all of my work in deep partnerships with communities, parents, and young people who are struggling for change. And really, this book and the ideas in it, they're my ideas, but they're also the ideas that have grown out of a really grassroots movement of Black and brown young people and parents and indigenous families who are really struggling to get education for liberation for their children. And so I had a little tension there about that. But I came to see that, well, this is also recognition not just of me, it's a recognition that folks on the bottom end of our society who have often marginalized and oppressed have a really valuable role to play in making change. And that this book being honored was also an honor for that movement. And I also hope that it inspires other scholars, particularly graduate students, particularly early career scholars, to see that you can make a career in the academic world by doing work differently, not by studying people from above, studying down on people, or even extracting their knowledge and wisdom and publishing and advancing our careers, but rather going deep into communities and really working with people to produce the kind of knowledge that can be valued as scholarship, but also the kind of knowledge that can really support movement building and create change. So I'd like to thank, first of all of those partners, and I have partners all over the country, and we've come together and formed something called the People's Think Tank for Educational Justice as a place that scholars and organizers and parents and young people can come together and build knowledge in a participatory way that is really combining, I think, the best of Western-based social science with community-based wisdom and knowledge and theory, and together produce contributions to knowledge and also contributions to change. So I thank them for welcoming me, a white male professor, into their homes and into their community centers, and trusting me with their stories and with the movement, not their movement, but a movement that I also feel that I am now part of. I'd also like to thank my family, my wife, Roberta, who's here. First of all, she has supported me in this long journey, which has had ups and downs along the way, taking me away from the home often, coming back distraught myself from what I've heard about children and families being abused in our educational system, but also inspired too by the work that people are doing on the ground. But not only has she supported me, I believe that we've been on this journey together, a journey towards educational justice, and she's taught me so many things. I couldn't do this work. I don't separate my scholarship from who I am as a whole person, and I believe that she's taught me that educational justice is not just something that we're trying to achieve out there. It's about how we live our lives. How do we relate to people? How do we embody our values with children and families in our day-to-day life? And that is part of the process. That is a fundamental part of creating the change that we want to see. So I thank her. My daughter, Sade, is here, and my other daughter, Ima, wasn't able to be with us, but they have supported me also through this, and I think have taught me about the brilliance and the beauty of young people, of young women of color themselves, opening up new doors for me to explore in my work, but also in my life. So I thank them as well. And I wanted, everywhere I've been over the last couple of days, people have asked, the last question has always been about where do I find hope? And we're living in a time right now that it may be difficult to do that. And this book is a hopeful book. it's a hopeful book, and it shows that when people do come together and they do organize, they can take on really deep-seated systems of racism and of class exploitation and actually make a change in their lives and in the lives of their communities. And it's not just a change of what happens in the school system, it's the change of what happens to people when they join together and form community and have a chance to stand up and speak out and connect with other people in that effort. So I find hope in that. And I also find hope, I think, going back to some of what Jeff has said, the demands of African Americans, of other marginalized and oppressed people for education, for liberation, is really a deep-seated desire, a demand that really goes back to times of enslavement and is never going away. So whatever we're facing in the current period, there are ups and downs, but that desire for a democratic education and freedom, I think, is important for folks' own community, but I think inspires us all to live our lives for a better future. So again, I'd like to thank the University of Louisville and folks in Louisville for welcoming me here over the last couple of days, and I hope that we are starting a relationship that we can continue to build and to grow. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brendan Depew. I am the director for the Grawemeyer Award in Psychology. It's a real privilege to be here tonight, and I honestly didn't know how meaningful it would feel. But I think one of the aspects that really stands out to me is that Charles Grawemeyer started these awards in the Grawemeyer family to honor not just somebody with great accolades, but really to honor an idea, and to honor an idea that is to the betterment of society. And beyond that, to not have experts and other academicians really select these people, but to have society at large, our lay society, or our communities, to select the winner of these awards. And I find that to be one of the most meaningful things about these awards. So I'm pleased to introduce the winner of the 2025 Grawemeyer Award in Psychology, Dr. James Gross. I'm going to talk a little bit about Dr. Gross. He received his PhD in clinical psychology at the University of Berkeley. He's now a professor at Stanford. He conducts Stanford's Psychophysiology Laboratory. Dr. Gross has over 650 publications. I know I said that this isn't about accolades, but I'm just giving a background, and I'll get more into the real meat of it. So Dr. Gross has over 650 publications, which have been cited more than 250,000 times. Woof. James is co-founding president for the Society for Effective Science, founding co-editor and chief of Effective Science, and a fellow in the Association for Psychological Science, the American Psychological Association, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And so those are just some of the numerous aspects that he's attained over his career, but I think the biggest impact is his idea and the simplicity of his idea. And if I can expound about it a little bit, it's really that emotions have a massive impact on our lives, right? They motivate us and they drive deep social connections. But they can interfere with daily functioning in debilitating ways. We all know somebody who has some kind of psychological, if not everybody, who's suffered from some kind of psychological dysfunction at points in their lives. And although research exploring emotional experience has been available for over a century, it's only recently have researchers begun to detail exactly how us as individuals can use certain strategies and certain cognitive strategies to effectively regulate their own emotional experience. Dr. Gross has really been a central figure in this new look at emotion, and he's developed a theory of emotion regulation, which is basically his central idea, that specifies specifically how different strategies can be more or less effective in different situations. And if you can't imagine, then you're probably not human how this affects us all. Emotions drive thought, behavior, and whatnot. So I can think of no better winner for the 2025 Grawemeyer Award than Dr. James Gross. I've had the opportunity to hang out with him for the last several days, and I can see how the social impact and his work has even affected his own life, such that I can imagine James walking down the street, practicing his own emotion regulation strategies, and perhaps enabling the voice of Monty Python. Always look on the bright side of life. And there's no better way to honor him than really giving him a great round of applause. Dr. Gross's theory of emotion regulation represents a key insight about emotion. That is, we don't need to see ourselves as the passive victims of our own emotions. Rather, emotions come from our thoughts and inferences about experience, allowing us to employ specific strategies that we can use to shape our emotions in ways that can enrich our lives. So let's give a great round of applause for Dr. James Gross. Oh my gosh. I don't want to hit him in the head with it. It is heavy. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brendan, for that wonderfully warm introduction. And thank you all for the wonderful time I'm having here at the University. I feel deeply honored and grateful to the Grawemeyer family and to the legacy of this really beautiful idea. The idea that ideas matter, and that ideas that matter can come from many, many different fields, but have a deep underlying unity and a practicality, ideas that can help us live more complete and full and happy and thriving lives and help others do the same. So I'm deeply honored and deeply grateful to be here. I can't believe my luck. Hearing the other award winners, I clearly don't belong, but I'm so grateful to hear their wisdom and thoughtfulness and just brilliance. So here I am, and what I thought I'd do in the few minutes that I have is to really do two things. One, say a word, in case it's of interest to anyone, how the heck I ended up being interested in emotions of all things. And then two, to maybe say a word or two about what my research team and I have found to be true over the past 30 plus years at Stanford. So starting with beginnings, which is a good place to begin, I suppose. How did I get interested in emotion? Well, it's really quite simple, and there are several kinds of stories I could tell, but I'll be honest tonight, and more complete than I sometimes am, say that I grew up in a family where there was a lot of emotion and quite some complexity, some challenges, and some of those came from wonderful ideals that my parents had and have, which is the world is a place where there's a lot of need, and they were very concerned with, wanted a big family, but very concerned with all the need. And so after having my sister and me, they decided to adopt a number of children. So I have 4 adopted siblings who were adopted as what's called hard to place. And what that means is that different backgrounds, different ethnicities, all sorts of differences. So I grew up in a very interesting family, challenging family in some ways. Lots of emotions, police visits. When people came to the door by accident, they would look at us and say, "Is this an orphanage?" Not really, but there we were. So lots of emotions. And I was kind of a quiet kid. I read a lot. Tried to figure out how I could use my ideas to make sense of this very complicated, emotional, and challenging world that I lived in at the time. And we all still, of course, live in, even as grown-ups. And so I made my way. We moved a lot. My dad was working out what he wanted to do, and so we moved a lot. Lived down the road a bit in Knoxville for some time, along with lots of other places around the country. And so I kept showing up to new schools every few years. Didn't have a lot of money, so my clothes were all patched to pieces, and always had funny haircuts because my mom cut my hair, always occasioning more emotional upset when I saw how horrible my hair looked at all times. I'm not sure it looks any better now, but anyway, those are traumatic times. And of course, showing up in a new place, you had to say what your name was on the first day of school. Now, if you remember what my last name is and was then, Gross, you're thinking that's not a good name to have when you're a little person. Or maybe ever, but certainly not when you're a little person showing up new with a funny haircut and a bunch of clothes that don't really fit from a family that really doesn't look like it fits anywhere. So up I came, interested in emotions, trying to make sense of the world around me, my little world and the bigger world as I learned more about it. In college, I was interested in pretty much everything. Majored in philosophy, loved history, political science, literature. Came late to psychology, but what I came to psychology with was some big questions. These are old questions, questions that go all the way back in Western tradition to some of our first philosophers. We read about some of these ideas about reason versus the passions, Plato. Certainly the Stoics were really interested in this question of how to live a good life in a complicated, shifting world, and what to pay attention to. How to live emotionally full lives in a world you can't control all the time. As I made my way through, I loved the questions, but I didn't see how I, as a philosopher, could answer these questions, so I turned to psychology. And those gave me the tools that I felt like I needed to empirically investigate ideas that people have had for centuries and even millennia about the good life, about what to do about the fact that as human beings we have emotions like anger and fear and sadness and anxiety and joy and love, and what to do with the contradictions they create for us as we move through our lives, because sometimes these emotions are so important. They are who we are. They create relationships that mean the world to us, and they steer us in good ways. But at other times, those same emotions can be so difficult and create so much pain and anguish and create things that break relationships rather than foster them. So my central question was this, very simple. What are emotions, and how can we discern whether an emotion is helpful to us or unhelpful to us in a particular moment? How can we show that discernment? And when we decide, for whatever reason, that emotion is not being helpful to us or someone we love, what do we do about it? And so turning to psychology, my research group and I, for the past 3+ decades, have been trying to understand this very simple and very tough question about the role of emotions in our lives, when they're helpful, when they're not, and when they're not, what we can do. And what we've done is something very simple. I'm going to tell you the essence of 30 years of work in the next 2 minutes. Okay, so seatbelts on, and here we go. And it's simple. You're going to be like, James, it took you 30 years to do that? You decreased your salary by a lot. So here's the idea. Emotions are these loosely coupled changes in how we feel, behave, and how our bodies respond. That's what we mean by an emotion. An emotion can be helpful or harmful. When we think it's harmful, there are some things we can do. And here's the idea. Emotions often unfold in a very simple way. There's a situation that we pay attention to, and we start thinking about it with respect to our goals. And that's what unlocks this loosely coupled set of changes we call an emotion. Why is that interesting? Because if we want to change our emotions, either increasing or decreasing emotions in ourselves or other people, let's keep that in mind, because what we can do is distinguish among 5 families of emotion regulation strategies that key in on different parts of that emotion generative process. What am I talking about? Early on, we can pick the situations we inhabit, partly as a function of what emotions are going to arise in those situations. That's called situation selection. Next family, we can modify most of the situations we're in, particularly as we get older and have more authority. Modify them in good ways, make them emotionally healthier for ourselves and other people. Attentional deployment. Now we're in a situation. Even in that situation, we can shift our attention strategically and change our emotions. 4th family. We can change, even after we're in a situation and are paying attention, we can change how we think about it. And that's this cognitive reappraisal that's at the heart of cognitive behavioral therapy, and I think has so much power to it. And finally, we can do what's called response modulation. That's waiting till the end of the day and trying to mop up after you have a strong emotion, maybe trying not to show it. And in our work, what we found is that if you keep this simple model in mind, this process model, which just means emotions unfold over time, you can intervene in different places. In our work, what we've shown is that not only can we sculpt or shape our emotions, but how we do that matters immensely. Different strategies have completely different consequences. If you sit every day trying to not show your emotions, that's going to lead to worse psychological health, worse physical health, not only for you, but the people around you. Let's contrast that with thinking differently, that cognitive change. If you can do that, and it doesn't apply to every situation, but when it does apply, you can find the positive in a situation that's pretty mixed. That's going to lead to what? Better psychological health, better physical health for you and the people around you. So the key idea here is when emotions are working against us, there are things we can do. And these things, what we do, matter to ourselves, to our families, to our communities, and to our society. And so this is how we've begun to nibble away at this age-old question of the role of emotions in our lives. And I am deeply, deeply honored to have the opportunity to share a few of these ideas with you tonight and in my time here. That's such a wonderful time. Made some wonderful new friends, and I feel so grateful to the family, to the university, and to us being together to celebrate ideas. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Tyler Mayfield, and I serve as the A.B. Rhodes Professor of Old Testament at Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary, and as the Faculty Director of the Religion Award. It is a true joy to introduce the 33rd winner of the Religion Award, Rabbi Julia Watts-Belzer, for ideas published in her book, Loving Our Own Bones, Disability Wisdom and the Spiritual Subversiveness of Knowing Ourselves Whole. To begin to talk about the ideas in her book, I begin with a vignette that she provides at the beginning of her book that I think is a window into her conversation around disability and spirituality. Early in her book, Rabbi Belzer tells the story of a deaf child in religious school. trying to comfort that child, the teacher assures them by saying, one day in the world to come, you'll be able to hear. And the child turns to the teacher and responds, no, in the world to come, God will sign. In her work, Rabbi Belzer turns the typical perspective on our understanding of disability upside down. Instead of grounding her work in the standard question of what the Jewish and Christian traditions say about disability, Rabbi Belzer asks how disability experience can serve as a generative force or a source of embodied knowledge about our spiritual lives. Julia Watts Belzer, a rabbi, a scholar, an activist, uses disability theory and her own experience to rethink biblical text and rabbinic literature. And the result is a rereading of biblical characters such as Moses, Isaac, and Jacob. And the outcome is a book that offers an engaging analysis of ableism and a political and social view of disability. Belzer's readings of the Bible are honest and critical of the ways that these ancient texts contain disdain for disabled people. Rabbi Belzer is professor of Jewish studies in the Department of Theology and Religious Studies at Georgetown University. She serves as a core faculty member in Georgetown's Disability Studies program. Her research centers on gender, sexuality, and disability and rabbinic literature, as well as queer feminist Jewish ethics and theology. Her current project, she currently directs Disability and Climate Change, a public archive project. It's an initiative that documents the wisdom and insights of disabled activists and artists and first responders who are on the front lines of our climate crisis. Rabbi Belzer delivered her public lecture earlier this week outside on the campus of Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. Unfortunately, she is not able to attend tonight's event. However, she has pre-recorded a video for us. Join me in celebrating Rabbi Julia Watts Belzer.
Thank you so much. I am so incredibly honored by this award, and I want to say thank you first and foremost to the Grawemeyer Awards Committee, especially to Tyler Mayfield for all of his work and extraordinary care and thoughtfulness to navigate accessibility and logistics and make my visit possible. Thank you also to everyone at Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary and to the University of Louisville. I am so deeply moved by this recognition. Jewish tradition says we should always give honor to our teachers, and so I want to lift up one in particular. Ibrahim Abdurrahman Farajaji, Zichrono Livracha, may his memory be for a blessing. Ibrahim was a brilliant Sufi Muslim multi-religious practitioner and scholar who taught me so much about what it means to braid together fierce theological insight, queer feminist imagination, and activist fire. When I first came to the Graduate Theological Union 25 years ago, he practically dared me to write disability theology, and he helped me hone the courage and the conviction to write and to speak in my own truest voice. As a writer, as a rabbi, as a scholar, I ground my work in the conviction that disability wisdom can crack open powerful new perspectives on spiritual life, that it can give us tools to radically reimagine what we think we know about God. But perhaps most important of all, my work is a love letter to disability community. I am committed to naming and claiming the brilliance and value and fundamental worth of disabled people's lives, to honor the fierce work we do to push back against normativity, to let go of shame and stigma, and to recognize the rightness and the goodness of our actual bodies and minds. It matters so much, especially in this moment, that we root deep into our own resolve, that we center justice and access and interdependence and care, that we work to build a world where we all can thrive. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Congratulations to all of our winners. Let's give them one more round of applause. I would like to thank Billy Potts in the Office of the Provost, as well as Sarah Neff, Kelsey Gooden, and Stephanie Rybert in Philanthropy and Alumni Engagement. They have worked nonstop in the days and months leading up to this week to make the Grawemeyer Awards a success. I cannot thank them enough. Early next week, to commemorate this evening, you should receive an email with a recap of these events, including a link to a video recording and photographs. Additionally, if you missed and would like to see any of the week's public talks from the award winners, they will be available online soon. Before saying goodnight, I would like the award winners to join me on the stage for a group photograph after this ceremony, and I would like to wish you all a very good night. Thank you.